And so by the time I graduated at the age of 25, I got a job as a business manager for a small racehorse farm. And so I was loving life. I think as far as jobs go, I have to say I think that was one of the coolest jobs you could ever have, because I got to be on the farm every day. I got to take a dog to work with me. We had cool clients. Wayne Gretzky was a client, if anybody follows hockey. He owned a share of a horse that we had on the farm. And so I got to meet a lot of really interesting people and got to do a lot of interesting things. And the other girl that ran the farm with me was a sibling, one of 6 kids, and all of her brothers were military. And so, of course, one of them came back from Korea to take her to lunch and ended up marrying me. Right? So that worked out pretty good, right? Well, everything happened in the exact arc it was supposed to. But anyway, to make a long story short, I was so impressed with my husband, Chris, because the military was such a calling for him. And as much as I loved what I did and I was doing something that I thought was really fun and cool, I never experienced that calling. And so for all of you that are serving and have served, I so appreciate you, because I think that was one of the things that I admired most about him, is that he really wanted to serve his country and follow through on that. So getting me to leave what I was doing and go with him was not a hard sell. Now, I had to leave the horse industry because there's only about 10 or 12 places in the world you can go at that level and do what I was doing, and the Army does not go to any of them. I had just been picking up different retail jobs. I did assistant store manager for Lowe's because I could move around with that pretty easily. And I hated retail, to be frank with you, but it was a way to make money and give me something to do while he was gone so much, so it was working out okay. But anyway, he went over, was over there for about 4 months, and he was leading a convoy in a Humvee, and his Humvee hit a roadside bomb. And so it basically blew through the Humvee and blew through him and sheared off, I guess it's injury, it sheared off about 60% of his gluteal muscles, which is one of the most feared injuries in the world, right? Like, is that what everybody's afraid of? But yeah, he sheared off his gluteal muscles all the way down and exposed his tailbone. So they medevaced him out to launch stool, and it took about 6 weeks in the hospital and about 26 surgeries with a blood transfusion in every surgery to put him back together.
Oh, wow.
So the fear we had at that point, the first thing was getting him to survive, right? And then the second thing was I knew his infantry career was over, which was devastating to him. He'd been 12 years in at that point and really had planned on having a full, at least a full 20 years with the Army. So he's pretty devastated. But then after they got him in good enough shape to start physical therapy, they sent us here to Virginia so that he could work out of Fort Myer, because that was one of the few units in the Army that wasn't going to deploy anywhere right away. So he was on staff at Myer until they figured out if he was going to recover good enough to stay in or get medically boarded. Yes, so when we moved to Virginia, I was just trying to figure out how in the world we were going to keep an income coming in that we were used to and have him maybe not work again. And, here I was in the biggest city I'd ever lived in, right? Northern Virginia and D.C. is a little intimidating to a kid from Kentucky. Biggest city I'd ever lived in. Had no idea how I was going to market horse background in the D.C. area. And so I got introduced actually to a network marketing company with nutritional products, and just had great people that were willing to help and teach me. And so that's what we did. And so for 10 years we built that business, and actually did very well with it. I predominantly sold weight loss products to doctors' offices, and we did close to $3 million in sales in nutritional products. And fortunately, that covered the time period. For about 3 years, Chris didn't work. And we went through his medical discharge and then didn't have to work for a whole other year because we were making enough money in that wellness products business. Now, if you met him today, 13 years later, man, he is a beast. He's our personal trainer is videotaping him for her Facebook page. So to meet him now, you would never, ever, ever know what he went through. But it's taken him full 13 years really to make that level of a recovery. But I'm so grateful that we started a business, because it gave me the freedom to be able to go and be at the hospital when I needed to with him. And we learned a lot about business. And in Northern Virginia, along with starting a business just to make things interesting, the first people that I met here and made friends with, I was meeting actually at business networking events. I actually found those folks more accessible back then than I did the base, because even though I would meet people from Chris's unit at Fort Myer, you know how it is here, some people lived in Rockville, we lived in Springfield. You know, even if I met somebody I liked, I couldn't really make friends that we could connect more often than, you know, at military functions once a month or something. So the business community became my friends, and I met some really great people, and we actually started a business networking group back then that still exists today, I'm proud to say. That group was a networking group that meets weekly for small business owners. And they actually meet over at the Moose Lodge right outside the Beulah Gate still. And 35 small business owners in 10 years have passed over $9 million in referral business that we've kept track of amongst each other. Wow. So it's been, and $3 million of that was this past year. And that group, the last 3 years, has been voted one of the top networking groups in Northern Virginia. And that was really where I learned business in a lot of ways. Was working with other business owners, and because we all helped each other, you know, we were all invested in each other's success. We came together every week to help each other, our businesses thrive. And so there was such a diversity of businesses, right? Because we had everything from franchises to realtors to me doing nutritional products to, you know, more traditional businesses like an estate planner, you know, the whole gamut. And so you're interacting, you're learning from everybody. And so I'm really proud to have been a part of that. And so that was really kind of how Chris and I came up through the business world. Now, in October of last year, the wellness company that we had repped for 10 years decided to just shut its doors. So, end of story. So that all the business that we had built, all the recruiting and the sales that we had done, just gone in a 5-minute Facebook post, right? Because they just decided to close their doors and pull the plug on the company. We didn't have any prior notice at all. I mean, I literally hung up the phone with a nurse in Tennessee that was coming on board with our program, and then they put on their website and their Facebook page, hey, we're closing for good, sorry about things. So there I was, right? But you know, what Bob said is so true, because I had this massive business network that I had built, and I had so many people that supported me. And one of my favorite things that I had really kind of started doing was taking on a leadership role with business owners. And I was often consulting with people and helping them in their businesses. And of course, with what I did, I was recruiting and training and mentoring people in business as well. And so I really was doing business consulting. I just was doing it for free because I just like doing it, right? And interestingly enough, I'd had people for a couple of years asking me if I would go full blown into the realm of business consulting. And so when that company closed down, I took a beat and I was like, well, I guess it's time for something new. Maybe I can go do something in business consulting and horses now. This will be fun. So it actually, that's the other thing I would tell you, is the personal growth of 10 years in business gave me the confidence and I don't know what the right word would be, the bounce back ability, right? Resilient, thank you. There you go. The resilience that it really didn't faze me when the company shut down. Because for me it was just like, okay, well now it's just time to do something new. But I don't know that I would have felt that way even 5 years prior, if that makes sense. And so it's, you know, there's so many things that happen when you go into the realm of business, but the personal growth it takes to take on the responsibility and to really start to become a person that you want to be a magnet for the business that you're building, to challenge yourself to come out of your shell and go out into the community and meet people and make strong connections and build relationships. You know, the growth that takes is so huge that at a certain point you get to where it's just, you just bounce back so fast. Things are just no big deal. And so I took about 3 weeks and shut my company down, because even though they shut down the way they did, you know, Chris and I owned our own corporation. And so people, you know, that we were working with, they worked with us. We repped a product, but they worked with us. And so it took 3 weeks, and I called everybody, every single person personally over 10 years and let them know what had happened. And some people I helped them get placed with other companies, and, you know, I tried to do the right thing. But again, I think too, your heart goes into things a lot, because when we were doing the right thing, the guy whose horse farm I managed called and he needed some consulting help. Right? So I decided, what the heck? So that's my first year-round business consulting client. And so now I'm managing all of his business operations remotely, as well as going multiple times throughout the year and operating sales for him and helping him buy horses all over the country.
Wow.
So that's pretty fun, right? It's not a bad gig. I also have picked up several other better-known businesses that are hiring me for consulting. One of the things that was interesting to me when we moved to Southern Maryland, because he ended up taking a job down at Pax River. So he's an Army guy, now he works for the Navy, right? So that's been like learning a whole new language. But Southern Maryland is a much smaller community, and even though it's considered kind of a suburb of DC, down there it's a lot of farmers and fishermen. What's there is really only built up over the last 10 or 15 years around all the BRAC stuff around the naval base, right? And so I was fascinated moving from the Northern Virginia community, where there's, you know, you can't take two steps without finding a networking event, a business development training. You know, people are doing mindset training up here. I mean, there's just so much up here in this region, right? Moved down to Southern Maryland, there was none of that. And one of the things that fascinated me was I went to my first networking event, and all these business owners came up to me and they were eager to tell me, you're going to really struggle in business down here. Nobody down here has any money. I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. And so many people told me, I'm thinking, oh, I don't know how that is, because if you look at where we live, the median household income down there is $80,000 a year. It's one of the highest in the country. Right? And so I'm just fascinated. Every networking event I go to, new in the business community, people just cannot wait to tell me how no one will spend money. So my brain is kind of like, this doesn't make sense. I had a girlfriend that had been in my other business with me that's a nurse practitioner that was doing aesthetics work, and I helped her get a monthly contract to come into a day spa. And so I'm watching women drop $3,000 and $5,000 at a clip with her, and then I go to another networking event, nobody has any money. And I'm like, what is going on, right? And so I realized it's some kind of a cultural conversation that has developed. It's a mindset, it's a culture. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do down there was start to shift that culture and shift that conversation. So the first thing I did this year was I actually launched a monthly business development training for business owners. I'm doing it at a very low cost because for me, I just want to impact the community because people down there aren't used to investing money in themselves for training. And so I needed to offer it at a reasonable enough cost that they would actually take me up on it. In my first class, I had 15 people that have registered that are in my class every single month. And we're doing mindset training. We're talking about manifesting abundance. We're talking about creating viable businesses. And I'm having an absolute blast teaching it. And they're all business leaders that are at the top of their game. You know, one's a partner at New York Life. I've got a real estate agent that's leading the team now of 20 people. You know, they're all leaders. And they're excited because they're shifting the conversation now. Yeah. Like I said, I started this because I thought, well, it'll pull in a little income for me, but more importantly, it'll help to shift the conversation and it'll give me a place to connect with people.
And you expand your network.
And you expand your network. You expand your network and you add value. And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons too I've learned is, you know, I teach people something I call win-win or no deal. You want to make sure in business that both parties get what's a win for them, right? And what you see a lot of business owners do, especially when they're new, is they'll really sacrifice their time or their pricing in order to get a client that then doesn't really appreciate them, right? And so the win-lose isn't necessarily on the client's side. A lot of times it's on the side of the business owner becomes the loser because they feel like they have to cut their rates or cut their value in order to get a client, right? So what I actually teach is to make sure that if you're getting value out of the transaction and the other person's getting value out of the transaction where it's a win for both parties, then it's a great transaction.